It was a cold November night in 1966, the kind of night where silence feels heavier than sound. Point Pleasant, West Virginia, was the kind of town most Americans would never think about. Small, quiet, forgotten by time. A place where everyone knew everyone, where nothing ever happened. Until something did. That night, two young couples were driving near an abandoned World War II munitions plant known as the TNT area. It was late, the road was dark, the air felt wrong, as if the night itself was watching. Then they saw it. At first, they thought it was a man, tall, standing near the road, but as their headlights swept across the figure, panic set in. What stood before them wasn't human. It was at least 7 feet tall, with massive wings folded against its body. And then, the detail that would haunt them forever, 2 glowing red eyes reflecting the headlights like burning embers. The creature didn't walk, it rose into the air. The couple screamed, one of them slammed the accelerator to the floor. As the car sped away, something followed, not running, flying. The speedometer climbed past 90 miles per hour, yet the creature kept pace, hovering just above the vehicle, its wings cutting silently through the night. When they finally reached the edge of town, the thing vanished, but the fear didn't. Shaking, pale, and terrified, the witnesses did something unexpected. They went straight to the police, and that decision would change the town forever. When officers listened to the story, they expected hysteria, maybe a prank, maybe alcohol, maybe imagination. But as the witnesses described the creature, the wings, the size, the eyes, something unsettling happened. Other reports began to surface. Hunters, drivers, factory workers, different people, same description. A winged figure, red eyes, silent flight. The local newspapers picked up the story, giving the creature a name that would soon echo across the nation, the Mothman. At first, people laughed. Then they stopped laughing, because sightings didn't slow down, they increased. Families claimed they saw the creature perched on rooftops. Motorists reported it chasing cars along the highway. Some swore it hovered above the Ohio River, watching silently. And then the phone calls started. Residents reported strange encounters beyond the sightings, voices on the phone that spoke in broken sentences, premonitions, warnings, dreams filled with images of collapse, fire, and death. People felt watched, uneasy, as if something terrible was coming. And the most disturbing part? The Mothman never attacked anyone. It only appeared, as if it were watching, waiting, or warning. By the end of 1966, Point Pleasant was no longer just a quiet town. It was the center of a mystery that defied explanation, one that would soon be linked to a tragedy so devastating it would shock the entire United States. But the people of Point Pleasant didn't know that yet. They only knew one thing. Whatever they had seen that night, it wasn't supposed to be there, and it wasn't finished. As the weeks passed, fear became a quiet companion in Point Pleasant. People tried to go on with their lives, going to work, sending their children to school, sitting down for dinner. But something had changed. The town felt tense, heavy, as if it were holding its breath. The sightings didn't stop. They multiplied. Witnesses came forward independently, describing the same impossible details, the same towering figure, the same massive wings, the same glowing red eyes that seemed to pierce straight through the dark. Some claimed the creature appeared on the roofs of houses, staring down at families inside. Others reported seeing it standing motionless along the road, as if waiting for something, or someone. Police officers began logging the reports seriously. Too many people were saying the same thing. Too many details matched. And then the phenomenon took a darker turn. It wasn't just about seeing something anymore. It was about what happened afterward. Residents started reporting strange phone calls filled with long silences, distorted voices, or words that made no sense. Some said the voice sounded metallic. Others claimed it didn't sound human at all. One man, Indrid Cold, became a name whispered around town, a mysterious figure who allegedly appeared to locals, speaking calmly, claiming to be from another place. Some believed he was connected to the sightings. Others thought he was something else entirely. Meanwhile, people began experiencing powerful premonitions. Mothers woke from nightmares of bridges collapsing. Workers felt overwhelming dread for no clear reason. Drivers suddenly refused to cross the Silver Bridge, unable to explain why. A few residents even reported hearing warnings, not spoken aloud but felt, a deep, instinctive certainty that something terrible was coming. Journalists arrived expecting to expose a hoax. They left shaken, because even skeptics began to experience strange events, malfunctioning equipment, distorted recordings, sudden feelings of panic with no apparent cause. The town's fear became national news, and still no one was hurt. No attacks, no direct violence, only appearances, only warnings, only dread. Then came December. On December 15, 1967, the town prepared for the holiday season. Christmas lights lined the streets. Shoppers crossed the Silver Bridge daily, connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Gallipolis, Ohio. The bridge was old, narrow, overloaded, but no one truly believed it could fail, except some people refused to cross it that day. They couldn't explain why, they just felt it. At 5:05 p.m. during rush hour, the Silver Bridge collapsed without warning. Cars plunged into the freezing Ohio River below. Metal twisted, concrete shattered, lives were lost in seconds. 46 people died. Families were destroyed. The nation watched in horror, and as investigators searched for answers, the people of Point Pleasant remembered something chilling: the sightings, the warnings, the premonitions, and the creature that vanished after the bridge fell. The Mothman was never seen in Point Pleasant again. For some, that was proof enough, not that it caused the disaster, but that it knew. In the aftermath of the Silver Bridge collapse, Point Pleasant became a town in mourning. Rescue crews worked through the night, pulling twisted metal from the icy waters of the Ohio River. Divers searched for bodies in near-zero temperatures. Families waited in silence, hoping and fearing for answers. Officially, the disaster was explained as a structural failure. A single defective eye-bar had fractured, triggering a catastrophic chain reaction. Case closed. But for the people who lived there, the explanation felt incomplete because the collapse didn't exist in isolation. It was surrounded by weeks of warnings, sightings, and unexplainable events that no engineering report could erase. Journalists from across the country flooded into Point Pleasant. National newspapers ran headlines connecting the tragedy to the strange creature that had haunted the town. Radio hosts debated whether the Mothman was myth, mass hysteria, or something far more unsettling. And then came the witnesses. Police officers, trained observers with nothing to gain, publicly confirmed that they had seen something they could not explain. Reporters admitted their equipment malfunctioned during interviews. Tape recordings were distorted. Film cameras failed without reason. One investigator noticed a disturbing pattern. The Mothman never appeared during moments of joy. It appeared before tragedy. Not just in Point Pleasant. Similar sightings were reported near other disaster sites: mine collapses, fires, unexplained accidents. The timeline was impossible to ignore. As the story spread, skepticism grew, but so did belief. Paranormal researchers arrived, including writer John Keel, who would later document the case in what became a best-selling book. Keel uncovered something even more disturbing. The phenomenon wasn't limited to one creature. There were UFO sightings, time distortions, messages that seemed to predict future events. Witnesses described missing time, altered memories, and encounters that felt deliberately confusing, as if something was manipulating perception itself. Keel proposed a terrifying idea. What if the Mothman wasn't a monster? What if it was a messenger? Or worse, a sign? The sightings stopped after the bridge collapsed. No red eyes, no wings in the night, no phone calls. Silence returned. But the damage was done. Point Pleasant would never be the same. Years later, a memorial was erected near the river, honoring the victims of the bridge collapse. Nearby stands a statue of the Mothman, its wings spread wide, its eyes glowing red. For believers, it represents a warning humanity failed to understand. For skeptics, it represents fear, coincidence, and the stories people tell to make sense of tragedy. But one question remains unanswered. If the Mothman was only a myth, why did it disappear the moment the disaster occurred? And if it wasn't a myth, what was it trying to tell them? And perhaps more importantly, what if it's not done warning us? As the years passed, one question refused to fade. What was the Mothman? Scientists, psychologists, government agencies, and paranormal investigators all attempted to explain the phenomenon. None succeeded completely. One of the first theories was the simplest: mass hysteria. Skeptics argued that fear spread through Point Pleasant like a virus. One strange sighting turned into dozens. Ordinary animals, owls, cranes, large birds, were mistaken for something monstrous under the influence of panic. But the theory collapsed under scrutiny. Many witnesses had never heard of the Mothman before seeing it. Several sightings occurred miles apart on the same nights by people who had no contact with one another, and some of the most credible testimonies came from trained professionals, police officers, military veterans, engineers, individuals not prone to fantasy. Then came the misidentification theory. Researchers pointed to the sandhill crane, a large bird with red markings near its eyes. But cranes do not chase cars at highway speeds, they do not hover silently, and they do not appear suddenly and vanish without sound. Another explanation suggested government experimentation. The TNT area had once been a military facility. Some believed the sightings were the result of secret tests, experimental aircraft, surveillance technology, or biological experiments gone wrong. But no evidence ever surfaced. No documents, no whistleblowers, no classified programs that could account for a humanoid figure with wings and glowing eyes. Psychological explanations followed. Some experts suggested that the Mothman was a projection of collective anxiety, a symbolic manifestation of fear before disaster. The human mind, sensing danger subconsciously, created a figure to represent it. Yet this raised a more disturbing question. If the mind can sense catastrophe before it happens, how? Then there were the paranormal theories. Some believed the Mothman was an interdimensional being capable of appearing briefly before moments of great disruption. Others thought it was a harbinger of death, an ancient presence known across cultures by different names, not a cause, a warning. John Keel proposed perhaps the most unsettling idea of all, that whatever was behind the Mothman was intentionally deceptive, that it altered appearances, distorted communication, and planted fragmented information to confuse witnesses, not to help, but to observe, to study human reactions to fear, belief, and tragedy. According to this theory, the Mothman wasn't alone. It was part of a larger phenomenon, one that used symbols, visions, and encounters to interact with humanity without revealing its true nature. And then there was the silence. After the Silver Bridge collapse, the sightings stopped completely. No gradual decline, no final appearance, just absence. For believers, that silence meant the warning had been delivered. For skeptics, it meant the story had reached its natural end. But the Mothman would not remain buried in history. Decades later, sightings were reported in other states, always near disaster, always before tragedy, never after. Coincidence or pattern? No theory has ever fully explained the Mothman, and perhaps that is what makes the story endure. Because some mysteries don't want to be solved, they want to be remembered. Today, Point Pleasant no longer looks like a town haunted by fear. Tourists walk its streets, festivals are held every year, souvenir shops sell postcards, shirts, and statues of a winged figure with glowing red eyes. The Mothman has become a symbol. But symbols are born from something real. Near the river, a memorial stands in quiet remembrance of the 46 lives lost when the Silver Bridge collapsed. Just steps away, the statue of the Mothman rises, wings spread wide, frozen in eternal vigilance. For some, it represents folklore. For others, it represents a question that never received an answer. Because the story didn't end in 1967. In the decades that followed, reports of Mothman-like sightings surfaced across the United States: Chicago, New Jersey, Texas. Each time, the pattern was eerily familiar: sightings first, disaster later. In 2001, residents near Chicago reported a winged figure with glowing red eyes in the weeks leading up to the collapse of a highway structure. In other cases, witnesses came forward only after tragedies occurred, afraid of being ridiculed. The timing was always the same: before, never after. Psychologists argue that the human mind searches for patterns in chaos, that tragedy demands meaning, and the Mothman provides a narrative where none exists. But not all patterns are imagined, and not all warnings come in forms we understand. What makes the Mothman story endure is not fear, it is uncertainty. There was no message carved in stone, no voice explaining what to do, no clear instruction on how to prevent the tragedy. Only appearances, only feelings, only dread. If the Mothman was a warning, it was an incomplete one, and that may be the most terrifying part, because it forces us to confront a possibility most people would rather ignore. What if there are signals all around us, moments of intuition, sudden unease, instincts we dismiss as irrational that are meant to protect us? And what if we've learned to ignore them? The people of Point Pleasant didn't understand what they were seeing. They didn't know what questions to ask. They only knew something felt wrong. By the time the truth became clear, it was too late. The Mothman never spoke, never explained, never returned. Or perhaps it did, and we just didn't recognize it. So the next time you feel an unshakable sense of dread, the next time you hesitate for no logical reason, the next time something tells you to turn back, ask yourself, is it fear or is it a warning? Because if the Mothman taught us anything, it's that some disasters are announced, and some messengers are only seen by those who are paying attention.